What are some creepy stories from your culture? The Brothers Grimm collected stories of folklore throughout Germany during the 19th century. Amongst them are plenty of famous and often dark fairy tales. One example is the famous story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. During the 13th century, the city of Hamelin suffered from a great rat plague. The people of Hamelin were out of their wits. One day though, a stranger in colorful clothes appeared and promised them to rid them of the rats for an appropriate payment. The citizens agreed and promised him a generous reward if he succeeded. The stranger was a skillful piper and played a melody on his flute that made the rats and mice of the city to gather around him. Enchanted by his music, they followed him when he stepped into a nearby river where they drowned. The piper had fulfilled his promise, but the people of Hamelin denied him his reward. The stranger left angrily and without payment. Some time later though he returned and played his flute once more. This time it were the children of Hamelin that fell under his tune's spell. He led them out of the town and into a cave under a mountain. Only 2 of the children returned, one blind, one mute, unable to tell where they had been. None of the other children were ever seen again. There are plenty of variations of this old folk tale, but the gist usually remains the same. 1. Necken, a man that sits by a body of water, usually rivers, and plays his violin to lure children into the water. 2. Maran, a woman born on Friday the 25th of December, she sneaks into your room at night and kills you, but she has some OCD of sorts and you can fend her off if by leaving a pile of cow hair on your windowsill, she'll have to count them all, which hopefully leaves you with enough time to wake up. Edit, got quite a lot of comments on this one, so allow me to elaborate a bit. I am from Sweden and these are a few stories I've been told about when I was younger. Necken is the about Hagamannen as someone else said, and Maran has several iterations. Some say it's sleep paralysis, others say it's a demon. I've always been told it's a demon that is created if a girl is born on a Friday that is also Christmas Day. If you wanna know more, check out this article on Scandinavian folklore. Oh, I've got some nice ones from de Druivenstreek in Belgium. Toe cutters, tenin sniders, who cut of children's toes when they walk barefoot through a field. The black dog / werewolf, local variant, who jumps on your back, then you have to carry him to a graveyard where he jumps off. Lodder met de Keet, Lodder with his chains, a BDSM enthusiast / S who follows you when you're all alone at night, rattling his chains to scare you and being a general dick. Very similar to aforementioned werewolf. Serepid monster, or something similar like Pudjuival, greenhouse well monsters, a monster that lives under the lid's greenhouse wells and pulls in children, then drowns and devours them. The ruins of a monastery in the Sonian forest that was burned to the ground, where it's said you can still hear the monks / nuns chant in the night. Dogan, the eyes, a phenomenon where you get suddenly enveloped by smoke, see a bunch of eyes and some burning people, possibly connected to the monastery if you look at the description of burning people in the Sonian forest. And a lot of witches, white wives, ghosts, bandits etc. The Wild Hunt even made a pass through my village. How to prevent them? Simple, make a cross, carry a crucifix, listen to your parents and the parish priest. And don't be a child. Not necessarily creepy, but interesting nonetheless. Edit, for those interested, most if not all of these stories are listed, in Flemish, alongside accounts of different versions, in the book Sagen en Legenden uit de Druivenstreek en het Sonian Woud. From Paraguay. Jay-Z Jatir, he's a blonde, beautiful dwarf that goes around naked in the woods. He owns a golden stick that provides him with magical powers. He kidnaps the kids that don't sleep in the afternoon, around 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. here, and if he returns them, they're often deaf or mute. Luisin is similar to a werewolf. The Tuesdays and Fridays nights he transforms into a horrible dog. The souls he takes never go to the afterlife, and that's why he's so feared. Some people think the 7th kid in every family grows to be a Luisin. Pambero, some kind of elf. He is the guardian of the woods and wild animals. He lives in the countryside, and announces his presence whistling. If he is your friend, he can guide you through the woods, and help you, but if he's your enemy, he can do all sorts of things to you. He punishes the hunters that kill more animals than necessary, by making them disappear forever. I'm sorry if it's not well written, I did my best. Small town in upstate NY. There used to be a train station there, back when people actually took passenger trains anywhere in rural areas. Fairly well-off guy, well known in town, comes racing into the station, right before midnight. Seconds later, a huge, old-fashioned, jet-black train with nobody aboard, I mean nobody, rolls into the station. No schedule shows a train arriving for another hour, but there it is. Guy runs through the booth and jumps onto the train. Train rolls off into the night. Nobody ever saw him again. 3 that I can think of. Rokurokubai was a women during the day. But when they would sleep, their neck would stretch to incredible lengths and roam around freely, drinking either blood or sometimes eating humans. Bakujira, or ghost whale, a huge ghost-like whale skeleton that is followed by a flock of birds or fish. They appear on rainy nights near the coastal whale villages, scaring and placing a curse on anyone who sees it. The curse would bring famine, plague, fire and all various kinds of disasters to the village that sees it. Jorugimo, in Japanese folklore, this is a magical, 400-year-old giant spider that can change its appearance into a beautiful woman. She will seduce young handsome men, wrap them up in her web and eats them. These 3 are also known as yokai. In Romania, I grew up on a farm and my grandma and her sister were super religious, but they also believed in folk tales. This one folk tale said that each year on a specific night in summer, forgot the date, the day of the Sinzim, these mythical forest nymphs would come out and play their instruments together around town. You were never supposed to go outside if you heard music playing because it was their way of drawing people out. My grandma's sister told me this story about a person from their village who was working late on that day and didn't want to go home. As he was working, he heard folk music and the sounds were getting closer and closer, so he hid in a haystack. He then overheard the sound of a string breaking and a female voice saying, "Oh no, my guitar string broke." Then another voice said, "Oh, don't worry, maybe that man over there can help," and they apparently took one of his muscles from his leg and used it as a replacement for the string, and since then that man never walked on that foot ever again. This story used to scare me so much when I was little, and I never knew if they made it up entirely or if it was a tale passed on through generations, but it was super creepy. Smile. Not sure if this is universal for my culture, but the nightmare of Lilith. I had sleep paralysis a lot growing up. When you're in your REM sleep cycle, your body is paralyzed to keep you from acting out your dreams. With sleep paralysis, you become aware that you're dreaming and open your eyes, but you can't move a muscle. However, since you're in your REM cycle, your dreams blend with your bedroom. A lot of people report hallucinating a witch pressing down on their chest, making breathing difficult. It's quite a scary experience. So I told my grandmother this, and she told me about the demon Lilith. In Hebrew folklore, Lilith was the first wife of Adam, also made from dirt, instead of from his rib, like Eve. Since they were made equally, Lilith refused to lie beneath Adam. She refused to bend to the will of a man, so she was banished from the Garden of Eden. She mated with the archangel Samuel, but found herself infertile, and became a wanton, baby-stealing demon in the night. Yeah, so my grandmother told me that my sleep paralysis was a visit from Lilith. A fun belief for an 8-year-old to fuel an already overactive imagination. Smile. Tokolosh in the Southern Africa. The creature itself didn't scare me, but seeing how genuinely fearful grown men in villages got at even the suggestion of the creature was terrifying. Something very unnerving about seeing what true belief of these small demonic kind of creatures was. The culture of witch doctors and rituals was very strong and real to many people. I once saw a school teacher run out of class screaming bloody murder and never came back to school after some kids joked about cursing her with one. Seeing people grow up in small villages without internet, it's easy to see how things spread, and along with no modern medicine or doctors, deaths often come with more spooky causes such as a witch or demon rather than an explained disease. Some rash forming, probably a demon possessing you rather than the fact you got an infection from a spider bite. The penis taker. He takes your penis. This is a Mongolian myth. My grandma told me this when we were at the countryside where there's very little human interaction. She told me that after it's dark or you go outside alone while herding, and if you go far enough to not see the chimney of the yurt you're living at, a ghost or a spirit comes, makes you faint and have a seizure. The way you know the ghost is near is when an animal of your herd starts to have a seizure and their mouth bubbles up. If you're fast enough and see the chimney of your yurt, you may be able to avoid the spirit, but most likely, by the time you realize what's going on, you're goners. I don't remember if you die by the end of it or is just left there. Even so, it was a pretty creepy story when she told me about it, especially when it was after sunset. La Llorona. If you're Mexican, you know her story. If you're not, let me tell you then. La Llorona was from Mexico who had gave birth to twins, but the father left them, so that meant she had to take care of them herself, but she couldn't handle their crying, so she drowned them in a river somewhere, but she didn't mean to kill them, but it was too late, they were dead. Then later on she killed herself, and people were saying that you could hear her in the streets saying mis hijos and crying loudly. Most parents use it as a lesson to listen to them or she will kill you. The rat-battling horse skull of South Wales. The Mari Lwyd, Welsh pronunciation, Mari Lloyd, is a wassailing folk custom found in South Wales. The tradition entails the use of an eponymous hobby horse, which is made from a horse's skull mounted on a pole and carried by an individual hidden under a sackcloth. It represents a regional variation of a hooded animal tradition that appears throughout Great Britain. The custom was first recorded in 1800, with subsequent accounts of it being produced into the early 20th century. According to these, the Mari Lwyd was a tradition performed at Christmas time by groups of men. They would form into teams to accompany the horse on its travels around the local area, and although the makeup of such groups varied, they typically included an individual to carry the horse, a leader, and individuals dressed as stock characters such as Punch and Judy. The team would carry the Mari Lwyd to local houses, where they would request entry through the medium of song. The householders would be expected to deny them entry, again through song, and the two sides would continue their responses to one another in this manner. If the householders eventually relented, then the team would be permitted entry and given food and drink. The Icelandic Yule Lads. Basically a bunch of elvish demons that raid your house during the night of Christmas Eve. Basically a bunch of bearded dwarves. The first one is Stekajastur, who harasses and kills your sheep. Gilly Argaur steals your milk and tips your cows. Stufa destroys your kitchen and steals dirty pans to eat the crust off them. Peevorus Licker, spoon licker, licks your spoons and is malnourished. Potus Licker steals your pots and also licks them. A Scarlicker hides under your bed and steals bowls you leave in your room to lick them. Hurroascalia slams your doors loudly while you're sleeping. Sgyr Gamma steals your skyr, yogurt. Jugnakrika, sausage swiper, hides in your oven and steals sausages that you cook. Gluggagej stalks you through your windows and steals things from you when he catches you sleeping. Ketcrocker has a hook for a hand and uses it to steal your meat. Kurtasnicker stalks children to steal and eat their candles. Gryla is the mother of these demons that abducts and eats children that misbehave. And of course, Doorway Sniffer, Gatabifu, who has an abnormally large nose to fucking sniff your doorways. He also steals bread. Might not be well known, but here in Australia we have them in Moonlight. Basically, if you follow or try to catch this guy, you were never to be seen again. It is said that it predates European settlement. So it isn't some colonists taking half-caste children at night skeptical. We also have the Yowie, which is like the Australian Sasquatch, and the Bunyip, an aquatic dog-like creature that drags children and women to their watery graves. There are also various rumors of big cats living in outback. A few planes went down in between World War I and World War II. As a result, these cats were released into different regions of Australia. The most common being the Penrith panther or Blue Mountains panther. We even named a football team after them. Sightings were that common. I have heard of instances similar to this all up and down the East Coast. So, I personally this it is likely true. Trinidad and Tobago, West Indies. Some Caribbean folklore. Dunes, the souls of children who have died before they were baptized. They are doomed to roam the earth forever. They are seen playing in forests and near rivers, and they have no faces and their feet are turned backwards. They may approach children and lead them astray in the forest until they are lost, or they may come near people's houses at night, crying and whimpering. To prevent the dunes from calling your children into the forest at dusk, never shout their names in open places, as the dunes will take their names, call them and lure them away. Duppies. Duppies are ghosts that roam the earth at night. It is said that to keep duppies out of your house you must either sprinkle salt or ice grains all around the house perimeter, as the duppy must first count each individual grain before entering. By which time the sun will have arisen and they must then return to the spirit world. La Dublesse, she has a face resembling that of a corpse, but hides it under a white wide-brimmed hat and a veil over her face. One of her feet is a cow's hoof, which she tries to hide under her long white skirt. She turns up at village gatherings, where she is immediately disliked by the women present, but she utterly charms the men and then asks one of them to take her home. He follows her, totally under her spell. She leads him deep into the woods and then suddenly she disappears. Unable to find his way home, he stumbles around in the dark until he either falls into a ravine or a river to his death. If you feel you may encounter our La Dublesse on your way home, take off all your clothes, turn them inside out and put them on again. Momodolo, my favorite, a half-woman, half-snake with long flowing hair which she combs constantly. Her upper torso is a naked woman, the lower part, a large anaconda's tail that is hidden beneath the water. Hunters tell stories of coming upon her in the deep forests we have. Men who commit crimes against the forest, like burning down trees or putting animals to death or fouling the rivers, could find themselves followed by her for life, both this life and their next. If you wish to escape her, take off your left shoe, turn it upside down, leave it and go, walking backwards until you reach home. Papaboy is the lover of Momodolo. He lives in the forest and he is the father of the animals that live there. He is often seen by hunters and other people who live near the forest. He gets animals out of snares and treats sick animals. He is an old man who is very hairy, like an animal, and usually is only dressed in a pair of ragged trousers with a bamboo horn hanging from his belt. He can turn himself into the form of a large stag, most commonly, or any other animal as well, to be able to observe the hunters unnoticed. He is usually very kind, but can be dangerous when crossed. He might even cast a spell on a bad hunter and turn him into a wild hog. Silk cotton trees. These trees still scare me to this day from all the stories I've come across. These huge trees are regarded with fear. It is reported to be very difficult to be able to find someone who will cut down a silk cotton tree, as they are said to be the home of spirits and duppies. To cut it down is to free them to roam the earth. Sukuyant, a person, typically an old lady, also heard lots of stories about this growing up, who has made a pact with the devil to be able to change herself into all kinds of different forms. At night she sheds her human skin and changes into a ball of fire and quickly flies around, sitting on tree branches, burning singular trees in fields and leaving others untouched. She has to slip back into that skin before dawn breaks and the cock crows, otherwise she will not be able to get back into it. When people suspect that an old woman neighbor of theirs is a Sukuyant, they go to her house at night and rub salt on her human skin so that it will shrink and she will not be able to get back into it and thus die. I have some stories from the Philippines that scared me when I was a child. Here are my favorites. There's these ghouls known as aswang. Many variations of these ghouls exist between cultures, but what is usually common between them is their ghoulish appearance, long tongue, bat wings, hunting during nighttime, their diet of unborn fetuses, and their salt and garlic weakness, as well as their weakness in sunlight. Maria Labau, she is once a hard-working OFW and a mother of 3 children. She became an aswang from someone overseas, and came back to her home where she supposedly cooked her 3 children and fed it to her husband. Of course, her husband finds it out, and he slashes her face with a labo or some kind of machete. That's where she gets her name. She escapes and runs off in the wilderness, hunting children. Tick-tick/walk-walk, a kind of aswang. Its prominent feature is that it tricks its prey through its sounds. When you hear tick, 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 loudly, they are far away. When you hear it quietly, they are near. Mononingol, also a kind of aswang. During the day she's a normal woman, doing normal things. But at night, she grows bat wings, detaches her lower torso, and flies off in search of pregnant women. The only way to kill her is to either hide her lower half or put salt on it. This way she can't reattach back and will die on direct sunlight. Chunuk, it's a baby demon that disguises itself as a lost baby in the forest. When a traveler notices said baby and attempts to rescue it, it'll go back into a baby demon and kill the traveler. White Lady, this is a ghost woman that appears in haunted houses and besides roads, acting as a hitchhiker. She's called White Lady because she wears white cloth during her apparitions. The most popular version of the White Lady is the one from Balete Drive. There are also many encounters of ghosts such as headless priests and Japanese World War II soldiers, as well as a lot of haunted houses. Charlie No Face or the Green Man. This is a real story. His real name was Raymond Robinson. When he was a boy he climbed an electric pole to reach a bird's nest but was shocked and became deformed. He lived with his relatives when he an adult but he would rarely leave during the day. At night though he went on walks but he mostly hid from neighbors. When he didn't he would smoke and have a beer. This part is the urban legend and not the real story. When the Green Man was a boy he climbed up an electric pole and he shocked himself. He fell to the ground and lost his eyes, his nose, and ear, and an arm. When he grew older he hid in an abandoned building. He got the name the Green Man because the color his skin became after he got shocked. Here is the Wikipedia article about him. Here at Galicia, Spain, it's the Santa Campana, Holy Company, a procession of tortured souls that roam the roads at night, clad in hooded white robes, and led by a trapped living person carrying a heavy cross. They are never going in your direction, but you'll meet them at a crossroad. If you are ever to cross paths with them, the living lead will pass on the cross to you, transferring the curse and switching places with you. There are many legends on what to do to avoid such fate, but only 2 are consistent anywhere you ask. The first, to draw a circle on the ground with a branch of holly and stand inside it, looking away. The second, to stand on the steps of a crucero, Calvary, a holy cross built in crossroads, and when the cursed tries to hand you the cross, replay with I already have my own, touching the crucero. That's why in any old crossroad here in Galicia, there is a crucero. I know of some, older, people who swear on their lives to have met the Santa Campana coming back home late at night, and to be saved by a crucero, so who knows. I'm Puerto Rican and when I was little my mom told me a story about a lady who many believed her father was the devil himself because she was born with animal-like features. She had a normal foot and supposedly had a hoof like a cow's and a tail as well. She would limp because the cow leg could never bend and since people were always picking on her she never left the house so she was always alone. It is unknown what happened to this lady but stories range from she went to live with her dad in hell, she was killed in a fire or she was murdered and eaten by someone. My guess was she was just born deformed and people around the time 1950s to 1960s, didn't know what that was like and Puerto Ricans are extremely superstitious. Not really from my culture but a local legend, Munga Road in Eel. Some time ago there was a school bus full of children that was crossing a train track on Munga Road. The bus got stuck on the tracks and was hit by a train, killing everyone on the bus. Apparently, if you drive your car to Munger Road and put your car in neutral on the train tracks and put baby powder on the back of your car, you will see handprints from the children as they attempt to push you away from the tracks, and you might even feel them pushing your car.